Hello my friends, welcome back to another tutorial. Something nice and small this week, painting a building with a curvature on it. Might be interesting for you to learn how to paint a building with a curve and creating the shadow as it gradually comes around that curve. I think that'll be a nice interesting tutorial for you this week. It's a little small canvas, it's 12 by 12, it's of a photograph very near to where I live. It's in Ballincollig. It's the Ballincollig gunpowder mill. Goes way back hundreds of years where they produced the gunpowder. Lovely little building, lovely setting. I think you might enjoy this. So yeah, limited palette, just a handful of colours. If you're looking to learn about painting buildings and circular buildings especially, this is going to be a good tutorial for you. Let's see what we can do with this. Don't go anywhere. Okay my friends, this is it. I have my palette, my canvas board, and I have a little sketch. There's a reference photograph. Now, okay, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think it makes a lovely subject as a study, just to try and show you about drawing shapes and getting perspective and curves, and shadows as well on buildings. Let me tell you what colours I have. Titanium white, naples yellow, cadmium yellow pale, burnt umber, phaylo blue, magenta, lamp black, and a little burnt sienna. That's it. We could do this with only a few of these colours really, but I've added an extra one or two just to get a bit of life into the painting. Okay, I'm not priming this with any oil or anything like that. It's just a dry canvas. I primed it once with some undercoat primer, water-based primer. I gave it one coat. It's dry. I won't put any oil on this, I don't think. It's only a small study. I'm going to grab a large brush, a large flat brush. Any kind of soft brush will do just fine, okay? Synthetic. I'm going to dampen my brush in some thinners, which I have here, linseed oil and thinners together. Turpentine and a little linseed oil dropped in, just a little. Let's dampen the brushes. I'm going to go with the blue sky first. Come on, let's do a nice rich blue sky. Some phaylo blue and lots of white. And you may need to keep adding little bits of thinners into this as you go, just to get it nice and thin. You want a nice thin, creamy consistency. That's what I'm aiming for. Okay? Nice and thin. Not very thick. Not very thick at all. So I'm going to go for blue with a touch of magenta. I want to make the sky a warm, rich blue, if you understand what I mean. Not a very cold blue, so that hint of magenta just keeps the blue slightly on the warm side. You have a look. Okay, I'm going to go with that. Let's go right across our sky with this. You can see how thin this is now. It's going very far, okay? And the fact that I've primed my canvas does help a lot as well. It takes the kind of the dryness out of the canvas, if you know what I mean. So the paints won't soak in too much. I'm going to go around my trees. It'll just make it easier to paint the trees afterwards. Soften that right across. Lovely blue sky. As it comes down, it's going to get very light. So just rub your brush on some tissue. Take some white and put some white into that. Nice thick white paint. Just scrape some white paint into that and bring it down. It's pretty much the same now for any building that I would paint like this. It's the same principle. The techniques are exactly the same. Okay. Now that's fine as it is. If you want, you can add a couple of little clouds in there, just floating across the sky. It's up to yourself really, completely up to yourself. But you don't have to, okay? It's completely up to yourself. I might just add a touch of white in around this area as well. Just a little bit. Give it a little bit of distance, I suppose. And I might just richen the top of these, make the colour slightly richer. Little bit of blue, touch of magenta. Just to, again, help with perspective, because in a blue sky, when you're painting a landscape or anything, the higher up it goes, the darker it gets. That's generally the rule, I would say. So if I was painting any kind of a blue sky, I would always make the blue slightly darker on the top of the canvas and then gradually soften that down. That's what I would do. It just makes for a more interesting sky, I think. If it's just a plain blue sky, I see a lot of people and they put just a simple blue all the way across, no lights or darks, it's just a plain blue, and it just looks a little bit flat. So I think just this little bit of dark at the top and a touch of light at the bottom, it gives it that little bit of perspective, I think. You see what I mean? It's just, it makes it a little bit more inviting, I suppose is the word. A little bit more, it catches your eye a little bit more. So we're done with the sky. I'm going to start putting in the trees at the back here. I'm just going to take my regular flat brush, or you could use your medium stubby brush as well. I have one here but it's quite worn. I must get another one. But any flat brush, I'll use a medium stubby, look. Let's just dampen that very slightly. Take some black. I want to go for a rich green. Take some black into that blue there, look. So it's mostly black. Touch of cadmium yellow. So a little bit of the two of those. I'm going to put in my darks first. A touch of burnt umber as well. Let's try that. And it's a very rich dark green. And again, the colours are quite thin. I'm not using huge amounts of thick colours in this. Now if you want, you could add a touch of blue to give it that bit of depth. Let's take a touch of blue, just to give the dark greens that little bit of depth in the shadows, because I'm painting the shadowed side of the trees. So all those darks in between the lights, that's what I'm painting. So let's just go up, dab right up into your sky. Let's just dab, 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 in and out, up and down. Okay? You don't have to be absolutely perfect with all of this. There we go. Dab, dab, dab. That dabbing just gives a little bit of texture to the tree. That's all it's doing. Little touch of texture. Now I'm going to go a little bit darker. Black, touch of blue, and yellow again, but it's much darker and thicker. You see what I mean? Just a little touch. I might go up a little bit higher. I think it needs a little bit more height, just to be seen a little bit better. Maybe, again, right into the blue. Bring some of that blue down into the depth of the tree right down there. And there's another very good reason for this as well. If you're painting a dark against the light, I want this roof to really stand out and jump out afterwards. So that's why I'm putting nice dark, deep colours just around the top of the roof here, to make that really jump out later. So I'm kind of thinking ahead, so to speak. That's it. I'm going to clean this brush. Just dip it into your turpentine, give it a quick rub on some tissue, just to get most of that green out. And let's get some lights. I'm going to get some lights on the trees, and I'm going for, again, a smaller brush, slightly smaller brush. It's flat, but it's slightly worn. You see the way that's kind of splayed down now very slightly. So it's not completely flat like this. When they're new, they're completely flat like this. It's slightly worn, so it has a little bit of a splay. Okay? That's perfect for these little bits of foliage. Let's go right into some cadmium yellow. And I would say just cadmium yellow on its own will be enough, because when we start putting the cadmium yellow onto this, it's going to start mixing with those darks immediately, so we get different shades. I picked up a tiny touch of that dark colour there, but that's fine. Load up the tip of your brush, and let's just start putting in little bundles of bright greens. You see? Just around the tips first, because that's what the sunlight is catching the tips first, you see. Now soften that down into your dark. That's the technique I use for painting all my trees. They're all exactly the same. That's what I do. So let's try another one here. Look, let's put it on like that, nice and thick, and then darken it down into that dark. Let it disappear. A lot of people, I find, overthink trees. They overthink how to paint trees. For me, it's just a case of keeping it simple. And above all, keeping everything very random. So you see the way the foliage will just kind of have a mind of its own sometimes, and it just moves around little splotches of yellow foliage. I hope this shot is okay for you. I could zoom right in to the painting itself if you wanted, but I know a lot of you like to see the colours being mixed as well. So it's trying to find a balance for me when I'm recording tutorials. Sometimes I like zooming in to show you details. Other times I like to show you the mixing. So I'm trying to find a balance that suits everyone. It's very difficult sometimes. But look, I'm just going to go with what we have here. This, I think the video shot I have of this at the moment is probably working all right. So we'll just leave it as it is and we'll go with this. So that's my first stage of highlights. I'm now going to go a little bit brighter. I'm taking some more cadmium yellow there just because I ran out. Let's get some cadmium yellow and some white. Nice thick colour on your brush, okay? And I'm going to go back in just to the tips of those and start putting in more around the tips. So if you think about it, it's the outside left hand side of those bright greens where all the brightest highlights are going to be. And now you can see it's really starting to come to life, isn't it? There we go. I think that's absolutely fine for a little tree in behind. I'm just going to clean this brush very quickly and I might use this brush again. It's a nice flat brush, I like it, so I might use this for the roof as well. I'm going to put on the roof, I'm going to go for titanium white, little touch of burnt umber. It's a warm grey, burnt umber, white, little touch of magenta, and a hint of black. And let's have a look. That's not bad, is it, my friends? It's a warm kind of a grey, pinky sort of a grey, so that's why I use burnt umber with magenta first, then I add tiny touches of the black as I need, and that gives you that beautiful kind of pinky grey. Let's have a look, let's bring it down. Now you can see I have a bit of an angle on this roof, because the rules I use in painting is, as a general rule of thumb, is anything above the halfway mark on canvas will start falling downwards, okay? It depends on where you're standing when you're taking the photograph. So if anything that's at eye level in your photograph, where you're standing, will be horizontal, okay? Everything above your eye level will start dropping slowly at a slight angle, like that. You see what I mean? And the higher up it goes, the more it's going to drop. So that's the rule I use. So let's imagine we're standing at eye level looking at the roof like this, maybe slightly above us. Everything above that point will start turning slightly as it goes up, you see. It will have a slightly sharper angle. And the very same is true for below. So below eye level, everything will start turning and getting sharper and sharper. Do you understand what I mean? And that's how you create perspective in a painting, I find. It's the easiest way of creating perspective. If you remember those little rules, your painting will take on a new life and you will start to see the perspective changing on your paintings, and it will start to look much more natural. So you're trying to get a natural perspective. So try it. You can practice with a pencil, just sketch a few little roofs and buildings and try this, and you'll see the difference. Rather than having everything straight like this, it just doesn't look right when it's completely straight, top and bottom. I'd always put a slight angle on the top of a roof either way, and that just helps. You can see how it just makes a much more eye-catching sort of a painting. I could probably bring this down a little bit more, but it's all, you know, you can change it as you go, really. I'm going to start adding a little texture onto this. It is a slate roof, so I'm going to suggest little touches of the slates I'll start with the ridge. I'm just going to dab with my flat brush along. It's just giving a little texture and some variation in the shade as well. So what I like to do is go from one side and bring a dark out and leave it soften outwards. I find when I do that, it adds a nice sort of a gradient to the roof. Rather than having just a flat colour, it's always nice, I think, to add a little texture, add a little, you know, a little something to a roof. I'm going to put in this strong shadow here. I'm going to go for a deep purple. Because we have a pinky grey here, so a deep purple will cover that really nicely. Let's try some phaylo blue, magenta, and a touch of black. Now it looks almost black in the photograph. Let's just try this. Little curve. And I might add a touch more magenta into this. I'm also going to curve it just here as well. Follow the curve of the roof. Okay. Then I'll take a touch of black just in by the wall of the building. Again, just using a gradient, so going from a dark out to a light. That's all it is. Now, I might make it a little bit wider. Let's give this shadow a really nice impact. There we are. My next job is to take a small brush, a small round brush. I want to pop a nice ridge across the top of that, just to show it off a little bit better. I'm going to just take a little of that dark colour I just used and pop a little ridge across there. Like so. And then maybe some Naples yellow with white, and just pop a little, just to separate those little caps on the top, add a little bit more detail to them. It's not really detail as such, it's just adding little areas of interest. Now, I will suggest as well 1 or 2 rows of slates, just the lines in between those slates, look. Very gently scraping the brush across, and even in here as well. And maybe 1 or 2 in between. Now I should use a smaller brush than this really, but this is just a study. This is just a way of showing you how to approach a roof like this. I can come back to all of that anyway, again, later on, with a small flat brush. In fact, you know what, we can do it now. Let's take a small flat brush, get some white, Naples yellow, touch of magenta, put a little light on one side of this. You see what I'm doing here is just, I'm flicking the brush at a slight angle, the same direction as your roof. Now when you're painting a roof like this, always paint your brush stroke in the same direction as the roof itself. So it's falling at this kind of an angle, so always make your brush strokes at that kind of an angle. Because if you come straight down, it's going to look strange. It won't look right. Now, I'll stop at that. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to start putting in this top roof up here. Let's try that one, shall we? Little white, little Naples yellow perhaps, magenta, mixing into this grey. So we just have a nice kind of a warm grey again. I'll start with this colour and then I will darken it down. Now, let's darken this down. Magenta with some black. Come down here. Remember, the right hand side of everything on this photograph is in shadow. Come across like that. Then perhaps a little touch of burnt umber into that. And go nice and dark just at the back corner here. Now I have a little hair sticking out of the top of my brush there. You can see I have a tiny hair sticking out of the top of the brush. There we go. And let's just soften that into the light side, very gently. So we have another nice little gradient there, don't we? I'm going to move on now with a slightly bigger brush and do the shadows of the building. I'm going to put a nice mauvey kind of a grey for the shadows. A little bit of phaylo blue, little touch of magenta, little touch of white, and then I might try a touch, let me just get that more pinky, a touch of sienna. Let's try this. Okay, that is not bad. Paint in the shadow of the building. Just follow your pencil lines. Like so. It doesn't matter if you pick up a little touch of that green. That's absolutely fine. That's a good thing, I think, because you're helping to complement the shadows with the green. When you pick up some of the green from the trees and it mixes in with that shadow colour, it helps. It helps your painting. I'm a big fan of that. So it's like tinting the colour slightly. So they're getting hints of purple, hints of green, and it looks right. Let's do the same with this. Now, this is the big one. This is the whole point of the tutorial. I want to show you how to paint a curve on a building that has one side in shadow. Let's take a little bit of phaylo blue with magenta and a touch of burnt umber. And let's try that now. Okay, that looks good. Again, we can add to all of this if we need to. Let's paint in this first dark section here. Now come down, follow the curve around, and this is the very same principle for anything that you're painting, okay? Start off with this dark colour, go to about halfway, paint that right down, okay? You can see how far we have the shadow, comes to about there, doesn't it? Come in around there. And we will work on this now. This is only the early stages. A little bit more blue there. Just mix up a little bit more colour. Might add a touch more blue into some of this. You see, I'm just softening a bit of more blue through it. And then, you see this curve, I'm just going to paint in this curve. As I have the colour on my brush now, I might as well paint that curve in. So I go across, you see, just look at the curve on your photograph. Follow where it's going. So you can see we have that much painted. Then clean the brush just very quickly and we start putting in our highlights. Take some white and I'm going to take a touch of magenta and a touch of Naples yellow. I want the highlight on this to be a very bright, rich, sunlit kind of a highlight. On the photograph it's pure white, but I want it to be a really luminous white. So a little touch of Naples yellow with magenta. It gives you that colour of the sun hitting the white of the wall. And it just really pops. It really pops out. So I'm just going to pop that in. And this is the important part, my friends. We're moving over and we're going to soften this into our blue, okay? Go along the edge, soften it together, then come down here and soften it into that shadow colour, look. So you're merging them together nice and softly and keep going. I come across into the shadow and then I bring the shadow across into the white, and I do the very same just up along there, and then again just bring your shadow back down. And something else that we have is the effect of the stones. I want to create that effect. Now that looks fine as it is, you can see it's a curved building, but you can see we have little touches of the shadow creeping out here and there as well in the stonework. So let me just get some of that shadow colour, that kind of mauvey colour, and I'm just going to start suggesting little bits of that shadow colour creeping out into the stonework itself. Does that make sense? And just be very random, very random with this. If anything, it's just adding a little touch of detail to your painting. That's all you're doing really, a little touch of detail. Now you could use a palette knife for this if you wanted to add lots of texture, by all means. Absolutely. Palette knife would be lovely as well. I just find sometimes with the brush like this, it works just fine. Now I'm going to go back to my small brush and darken the back of this. Again, remember what I said about gradients. So adding a slightly darker hue on one side. I'm just going to take some black with magenta and perhaps a touch of blue. It's really just to give it some variation. I don't like the colour being completely flat, if you understand what I mean. So look, a little dark at the back and just soften that dark back out into that bluey colour, adding a little bit here and there, look, being very random with the brush. Up along the top. That looks a little more appealing, doesn't it, having that slightly darker shade going up. And we can do the same in around here, perhaps. Look, just dabbing the brush, adding a little dark here and there, and letting that soften out. And just creating the impression of the different types of, you know, bricks and cracks and all that kind of stuff. You can see it makes the wall look a little bit on the rough side, I suppose. So now you can see we have the impression of a lovely curve on the building, don't we? I'm going to do the very same now with my roundy brush. I'm going to clean that brush and I'm going to grab some thick white paint with my roundy brush. Look, load it up with some thick white paint, and let's just do the very same on this outer edge here. A couple of dabs of colour, look, just white, nothing else, leaving lots of thick paint on the canvas, and that will just really lift the bright side of that while giving it some texture as well. It's all about giving the impression of those bricks on the wall, and you can come in slightly as well, giving little touches here and there, just to show that the light is very rough on the surface. It's catching the roughness of the surface here and there. And that will do me fine. I'm happy enough with that. Now I'm just going to take a little black and just come over here and put a little black just to separate the edge of that roof with the trees. And I'm going to put the same just on this side. Okay, just little things that would help. And I'm going to, again, reinforce the curve of my shadow where it meets that wall. Alright, that is a lot of our building done. From here on, it gets fairly easy, I would say. I might just add little details to this building at the front. Here, for example, soften this, put a dark line in here. There's a couple of little features in the building just at the front. So, no harm just to make a little impression of some of them. We have that. We have another little something on that side as well. Just an impression again. We have this kind of a grated window on the front as well. Look, a couple of dabs, scrub brush is all you need. But it's these small details which will stand out later. When someone is looking at this and they know this building, they will say, oh look, you know, I remember those little details, and that's nice. Now I'm just going to pop the top of the roof around here, or the top of the building around the bottom of the roof, and then it goes into a lighter colour just around here. Like so. And you know, you get a lot of pleasure from doing these types of paintings. You just you learn an awful lot, believe me, about shape and colours and shadows. So what I would say to you is, even if it's not something that you would like to paint, I would try something like this. If you have something like this where you live, a little building, anything at all, it could be a house or anything, try it just to see what happens, because you'd be very surprised how much you would enjoy it in the end. Put a little cap on this. Okay, and we can maybe just bring a little light on one side. Remember, it's just all about highlights. Painting is basically lots of highlights and lots of darks on a canvas. That's what I would say. And perhaps a suggestion of a little flag or something up there. Look, just something small, that's all. And I'm just going to reinforce the shadow under here. So you can see now how these little details make all the difference in a painting. Just a simple detail. Now I'm just going to check the focus on that, just to make sure the focusing is all right on my video. Let's move on and do the front of this. That's nice and simple, I think. Just some white, again some Naples yellow and some magenta. Let's pop in this lovely bright wall at the front here. It starts at the side of the door here, doesn't it? Bring that right across. And this is only a 12 by 12 painting, it's not a big painting, so you know, you can have a lot of fun with this type of a painting. A little bit of Naples yellow in there, just to catch a bit of sunlight, look, just rough it up a little bit. We can make the wall slightly rough at the edge as well. Doesn't have to be a straight line completely. And then I'll go back in and just bring that shadow across. Let's make a shadow colour again. Phaylo blue, some magenta, plenty of magenta I would say, touch of burnt umber. And maybe a touch of white just to soften it ever so slightly. Just follow that shadow down here. Now it might be a little dark, so let's take some white again, another touch of magenta. That will soften through the colour we already have. Let's come over here. Stops at the door, doesn't it? And kind of cuts across under the roof a little. Okay, and maybe just add a hint more of the blue and soften this together slightly, look, just like that. We have a nice dark line under our roof, don't we? Let's take some burnt umber with some black and let's put a nice dark line just straight across. And maybe a couple of features under this. See, it's really small little things. And these small things make all the difference in a painting. Now let's go for some black with some burnt sienna. Paint this door. Try and make sure it's reasonably straight. And just black then at the top of the door where it hits the shadow. Like so. I'm going to get a very small pointy brush and just start putting in a little couple of small details here and there on the front of the wall. I see a little bit of light just hitting down here on the door. A little bit of light. Let's pop a little bit of Naples yellow in. Okay, just like that. And we have a little bit of colour showing through some of the shadow up here as well. Like so. We have little touches of shadows on the brickwork, don't we? So I'm just going to pop little shadows here and there around on the brickwork as well. Suggestion of a very old window in there. You can see that on the photographs. It's a very light suggestion of a little old window. I'm going to start putting in now just some little cracks around some of the big stones. You can see a lot of the big stones, they have some very strong little cracks and shadows on the cracks as well, don't they? So I'll just pop one or two in. If anything else, it's just to rough up the surface a little bit. I don't want just a flat white surface, do you understand what I mean? So it's really just to rough it up a little bit, add just a little touch of the detail. Look, little lines, squiggly lines here and there. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. Just a suggestion. No, how's that? I mean, it's not too bad, is it? Let's get some of the greens in. I'm just taking a little flat brush, any rough flat brush you have. Let's take some green. Let's just take cadmium yellow, which already has a little touch of green in it. Let's have a look. That will do me. I'm just going to pop in the green. Don't worry about our shadows. I'm just putting in a very rich green all the way along first. Okay? And fill in all of that green. Leave your pathway. I would say just leave the pathway for now. You could go up here and soften it into the tree line as well. A softer line looks nicer, I think. It always seems to look more appealing. Pick up some of that blacky colour again. So we have a very rich green again. Okay, let's come around our little building here. Fill that in. Don't overthink all of this. Just pop the green in. It doesn't matter if it's light or dark or whatever. Let's just fill it with green. Any kind of green at all will do. Now I'm going to flatten just the bottom of this in a little bit more. There. Now we have something up at the back, don't we? Little suggestion of maybe a wall or something. So I'll just pop a little wall in up there. This dark kind of a mauvey colour. Because I know from being in this area, there's a roadway up here with a wall. I'm just going to pop that in. Okay, just nice and quick like that. Let's make a dark green. Phaylo blue, yellow and a little black. Pop a few shadows in. We have a shadow on this, don't we? Look. Just come along here and along here. Pop in your shadow. I will roughen the edge. Look. Roughen up the edge. Don't make it a completely straight line. Couple of shadows at the back. Just to suggest there's something at the back, casting a shadow. We have a little post here which casts a little bit of a shadow as well. I'll put a little shadow in here. You see we have a little darkness just in there as well. Just dab your brush very gently. Just make it nice and rough, remember? Nice and rough. Allowing it to almost disappear into the building a little. Along the front, I'm going to just take that colour and soften it up into the building here and there. Just to roughen it up again, make it nice and rough. It doesn't have to be a completely flat line. You see what I mean? We also have a hint of burnt sienna around here. So I'm just going to pop that in with my brush very loosely. You could use a fan brush for all of this if you want. That would make a nice effect as well. Absolutely. A little fan brush can work wonders on all of this. I'm just going to pop a little just in the edge of the footpath, look, just dabbing it along. Okay. Now, little touch of dark. I'm just going to fix some parts of that wall there. I will add a little touch of white now, you see, with a small brush, let me show you. Just to bring out the edge of that building again, nice and clean. Just grab a little white and bring a little white down. And that just sharpens up the building again, doesn't it? Ever so slightly. I'm going to put my footpath next. I'm going to grab some white, very light colour, very light kind of a blue. I'm just going to pop in my footpath all the way along. Okay, you can see it's a kind of a grey blue, what I'm using. And you can see I'm almost softening that into the green as well. I like to soften colours together slightly. It just makes a much softer appearance, I find. Because it's a dirt kind of a footpath, it's a track, it's not an actual footpath, so the green grows into it slightly and vice versa. That's our path in. I'll take a small brush and I'm going to grab some yellow. Now look how nice this has turned out already. Just from this basic techniques and very quick. You know, we didn't spend a lot of time doing this. We just kind of went along, put in some lights and some darks. That's all we did. Some Naples yellow and some white. I'm just going to highlight footpath just here and there, look. A little bit of thick colour to there. Then we have our shadow. The shadow is what brings all of this to life. First I'm going to put a shadow across this green. Let's take some yellow with some of that blacky colour. So we have a dark green again. I'm just going to dab over all of this here. Make it nice and rough. And then go into our small brush just to get these details in. That's all. So for instance, look, we can just go like that. Make a little couple of marks just to suggest the leaves on the tree casting that dark shadow. So that's the shadow done. Isn't it amazing how quickly these things come along? Now we have to follow that shadow out into our footpath. So what I'm going to do is mix a deep purple, magenta, some phaylo blue and a little black. So now I'm just going to follow where that line comes right across my footpath in a very random sort of a fashion, leaving some lights in between here and there. I think I need more black. Now you can begin to see how it actually becomes quite easy. If you think about it just logically and try to simplify it, you can see it is actually just a couple of brush strokes and have a bit of fun. Now I'm going to go back and make another dark green on the other side to carry that shadow right across into the other green. Does that make sense? So I'll take some black, some yellow, get a nice dark green again, touch of phaylo blue perhaps, little touch, and we come across and we're going to bring that shadow into the green and then let that, it's just sort of filters away, doesn't it? It just kind of, see what I mean? It's just a very random sort of effect where it just filters away little lights here and there. You can see how I'm just making this section very impressionistic. You know, I'm not going into huge details with all of this. I just want to make it impressionistic, that's all. A suggestion of the shadow coming across and into the grass. And just soften it where they meet. Look, why not? Just soften it where they meet. I think that really helps. And I will also just darken the shadow, just a little touch, down at the bottom. Just for added depth. Next I'm going to just take some light colour, naples yellow with some white, touch of magenta perhaps. And I want to pop a nice warm sunlit kind of a colour in between some of these, as if the light is just coming through and catching the ground here and there. Just a little. Now I could call that finished. I really could. I could actually call that finished. But I'm going to get a soft fan brush, a little touch of yellow. I'm just going to go around and rough up the grass a little bit. Softening stuff together. Look. That's all. Softening a few little things together. After this, really, it's just a case of looking around and seeing what you think you'd like to do. I might like to darken in here just a little. Okay? Dab it up into the wall. Let's give the wall a little bit of dirt as well. There we go. Okay, just merging stuff together. We have a little post. Just at the corner here, I can see a small post. Now that may be insignificant, but a lot of people who know this building will look at this post and say, will look at the painting and say, you know what, there's a post missing. There's a little post here. So I'm going to put a little post just here. Like that. Pop a little black down the back side just for the shadow. And then bring that shadow across into the green. Look. A small shadow coming off of it. Then a hint of a bright colour hitting the light side, just like that. That's all you need. And my friends, I'm going to call this finished. I don't see any need why I need to keep at this. It's absolutely fine. I could doodle with this, just go around and add little bits and pieces on here and there, but really, do I need to? Is there a need to keep going at this? I don't think there is, because we might spoil what we have. That's the risk. There's always a risk, isn't there? If you keep going, you may just make a complete mess of what you've just done. So I'm going to stay on the side of caution and just call this finished. There we go. It has been an absolute pleasure, my friends, an absolute pleasure doing this for you. Look, also I could add a little touch of green into the centre of the path. You see little bits of the green kind of just coming out into the centre of the path. It's a very kind of a messy track, so to speak. You could just add little touches of that here and there. Done. And that's it. I will zoom in, my friends, just to show you, give you a quicker look, so you can see how amazing it is. When you do a shadow like this, it just tends to bring everything to life, doesn't it? There we go. How to paint shadows on a building and create a curved building as well. I hope you found that interesting, my friends. I really do. And with that, I am going to say thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed watching. I hope you've learned a few little bits and pieces. The picture in itself is probably not a very eye-catching picture. It might not be something that you would want to paint, but when you see it painted and you see the lights and the shadows and how realistic it can look sometimes, it's worth it in the end, because it's just a pleasure then to stand back and see what you've painted, even though it is just a building. But yes, I'm very happy with this. Lovely, lovely little cute painting. Put a frame on this. It might catch someone's eye. You never know. Sometimes these buildings can mean an awful lot to someone, deeply to someone, and you might not think it. So try it. Just try painting something unique, something that's out of your comfort zone that you might not think is a good subject. Sometimes when they're painted on canvas, they make good subjects. So just stretch yourself, you know, try and paint outside your comfort zone every now and then. Just try it. It won't do any harm. It's just paint. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you have done so. A huge thank you to my patrons. We did a lovely boat just a few days ago on Patreon with reflections. Go and check it out if you're interested. The link should be there somewhere. And thank you so much for supporting me. I appreciate it deeply. Okay, happy painting. I'll see you very soon. Take care and God bless.